Hello everyone and welcome you all to my channel Mukul's Pharmacology. So today we are now up with a new video and today I'm going to discuss something about the preclinical trials. So many of us have already heard about this terminology preclinical trials. During the period of pandemic, many people were at home because of the restrictions that were implemented by the government, and many people had some time to search something new or to achieve what they couldn't achieve during their busy life schedules. So some of people actually tried to understand what exactly the preclinical trials and clinical trials means. A lot of information is obviously available on the Google and another search engines on the internet, but the information mostly is in the scientific language, which is not easily understandable by a common people. So today I am up with this video to explain what exactly the clinical trial is and what things are to be carried out in the preclinical trials, followed by the clinical trials. Before I wanted to speak on this topic, I had a discussion with many of people where people actually ask like, ultimately you are doing injustice to animal, you're molesting the animal. So how can you promote these type of topics? So I want to make one thing clear that many a times what happens is we people do get bias when it comes to the humanly treatment to animals. Like for example, when it is a thing about the animals or which we use them as a pets, then we are very much emotional to them. But when it comes to the animals which are not used as a pets, then we are not that emotional. Like for example, you will find many people who will say that in use of your studies, you directly kill the animals, so you're so cruel and everything. So then, what is your opinion on the people who prefer to use the non-vegetarian food? They are also directly killing the animals. So why that bias should be there? So it at from my point of view, I want to say that even though we are using it for the study, we do have many rules and regulations which do control these type of studies, and right from buying those animals till we sacrifice the animal, we take utmost care, and there are many rules and regulations which do controls these type of studies. So I just want to make this thing clear that we do not do any of the injustice to the animals, and even we do take care of them as if they are our own kids. Okay, not only we, but every single scientist who is involved in the preclinical trial, he or she behaves like the same. Now coming to the actual topic of preclinical trials. So here you can see the title, A Journey of a Drug from Laboratory to Human Volunteers. Now many people are still not aware or still confused that how you can use animals for the testing of drugs which are supposed to be used on the humans, because humans and animals are completely different. But let me tell you, we all being a biological creatures, there are certain species of animals which have certain similarities with that of the humans. Not all the animals, not all of their species. Now, when we talk in terms of the similarities, we have to focus on two things. The first thing is similarity in terms of the internal organ arrangement, and similarity, secondly, similarity in terms of the genetic makeup of that particular animal. Okay, so we'll be discussing all these things in detail. Let us start with some introduction regarding the preclinical trials. So the preclinical trial term is not new to us. We have heard this about clinical trials, that before any drug comes into the market, it is firstly studied on the human volunteers. And now, as the name itself indicates, preclinical trials, this is the stage where any of the drug, when it is completely new, when any new drug is being invented by any of the company, any of the organization, or any of the institution, at very first stages, it is being tested into certain species of the animals. Why it is necessary, we will come to know soon. But make it clear in your mind that before completion of any of the study in the animal models, or in the phase of preclinical trials, FDA, that is Food and Drug Administration, will never give you permission to launch that particular drug into the market. Okay. So before the drug is actually tested in human volunteers, it is studied in a variety of laboratory animals, which is called as the preclinical trials, right? Now, what exactly are the preclinical trials? So, preclinical trials is one of the most important steps in the process of research and development. So, I already told you there are a variety of steps we will be discussing in the next slide. As per the definition, if you see the testing of effectiveness and toxic potentials of any of the drug molecule using the laboratory animals. Now, here we have to make one thing clear in our mind that any drug is basically a chemical structure. Okay, if we try to understand the physiology of the human body, then even a human body is made up of variety of chemicals which we know by different names. For some of the chemicals we call them as enzymes. For some of the chemicals we call them as uh, neurotransmitters. For some of the chemical structures we call them as receptors. Ultimately, at a molecular level, they all are the chemical structures. Okay, basically, human body is made up not for the drugs, but for the chemicals which are inherently present in the body. So whenever designing a new drug, we have to take into consideration this fact that if you randomly prepare any of the chemical structure, then human body is not at all going to accept it as it is. So you always have to keep at least one functional group or one particular structural part of that chemical compound in such a way that it should be structurally similar with whatever the inherent chemical is there. Like for example, we will take example of acetylcholine. It is one of the neurotransmitters which is commonly involved in the movement of smooth muscles. Like whenever you want to walk or you want to talk, wherever smooth muscles are there in your body, in the movement of every single smooth muscle, acetylcholine is required. In certain cases, when acetylcholine levels goes on the higher side, then you can feel a condition which is called as muscular cramps. Okay, where severe muscle contraction will be there. Now imagine a situation you want to design a drug which should act upon the receptor where acetylcholine is acting, and that particular drug should release the excessive contraction of that particular smooth muscle. So whenever you want to design that particular drug, you have to make sure that whatever the functional groups or whatever the bonds which are necessary to bind at that particular receptor, like muscarinic receptor or nicotinic receptor, these two type of receptors are mainly involved in the binding of acetylcholine. So if you want to target the same receptors, then you have to make sure that whatever the chemical structure you are designing, that structure should be structurally similar with that of the active site of that particular receptor. For rest of the structure, you might add some more rings, some more bonds from the organic chemistry point of view. But ultimately, you just cannot simply predict that the receptor binding site is similar as that of the acetylcholine. So all the effects that will be observed by that particular drug will be the same as that of acetylcholine. There will definitely be some or the other differences, right? Because again, I'm telling, our body is not made for the external chemicals. It is made for the inherent chemicals. So just by looking at a structure of any of the drug, you simply cannot predict that that drug is going to be only effective and not at all toxic. So it is very much necessary that at the initial stages, you have to first focus on the toxic potential. Okay. Then coming to the main aim of these trials, to test the safety and efficacy of the new chemical entity. Now imagine a situation. Let us take a simple example of a paracetamol tablet, or what we commonly call it as a crocin tablet. If you check the concentration of paracetamol present in that particular tablet, you will find a specific concentration. Like for simple crocin, it will be 500 mg. For crocin advanced, it will be 650 mg. If you go for the suspension, which is made for the kids, then it would be available in the strength of 125 milligrams per ml. Right? On what basis these doses are decided? The most important data which is required to understand the active dose of that particular drug is the data of toxicity. So even when the preclinical trials will be started, at the very first stage, very initial stage, the first study that is performed is called as the toxicity study. So we will try to give different levels of the doses to the animals, and in those dose levels, we will try to understand that at what particular dose the toxic effects are being observed. To conduct these type of toxicity studies, there are different types of guidelines. If from the Indian scenario we try to see, then under the Drug and Cosmetic Act, we will find Schedule Y guidelines are there for conduction of certain toxicity studies, and at the global level OECD guidelines are available. So you can anytime search on the OECD website different types of toxicity guidelines. Based upon the data of toxicity, afterwards, the doses which are required for the treatment are decided. Okay. Now coming to the important steps of the drug research and development process. The very first thing is determination of the lead molecule. What happens is, whenever any company or any organization, any institute wants to introduce any new drug into the market, they will not simply focus on one single compound or one single chemical structure. They will design a library of at least 10,000 to 1 lakh different type of structures. Okay, because out of this 10,000 to 1 lakh structures, hardly one or two molecules can actually have the potential to be get launched into the market. What happens is, as I told you, every single drug is first of all tested for its toxic potentials, and 90% of the molecules gets eliminated because of its toxic potential, which are observed in the initial stages. Right? After we decide the lead molecule, for the decide for deciding the lead molecule, nowadays a newer artificial intelligence techniques are available, which we call them as computer aided drug designs. Means what? Some of the scientists or some of the people who have studied about whatever are the receptors present in our body. They have prepared the three-dimensional structures of those receptors, and they are being available on the website called as protein database. So we can download the three-dimensional structure of a protein database. There are certain softwares which are used for performing the in silico drug binding studies. In silico means in the software you will download a receptor structure, you will download your drug structure, and you will try to understand if there are any chances of binding are there or not. If you get the chances of binding, then you can definitely go for the next step. Okay, so by performing this type of computer aided drug design study, you have to first determine the lead molecule. Means out of this 1 lakh structures, how many structures do actually have the binding potential with that of the receptors which we are targeting. Okay, after that, second important step is development of the bioassay method. Now we know whenever any drug treatment is being given to any of the patient, if we want to check how much drug is actually reaching to the expected site of action, then the level of drug or the concentration of drug has to be measured in the blood. So after giving the medicine, after a specific time points, the blood will be collected, and whatever the concentration of drug is present in that blood, that will be calculated. Okay. Now, for every single drug, the method by which you are going to evaluate this particular drug concentration will be totally different. So first of all, you have to design that method, because if you give it directly to the animals or maybe directly to humans, you collect the blood, but if you don't know how to determine the concentration of that drug, then the whole study will go waste. So here you have to develop the bioassay method. Okay. After that, the next step comes, that is the preclinical trials. Now in preclinical trials, as I'm discussing from very first step, we will actually investigate the drug for its effective as well as toxic potentials using the laboratory animals. So there are three different types of studies which are commonly performed in the preclinical trials. We'll be discussing in the upcoming slides. Now imagine a situation, you have performed a preclinical trials and you have found out for certain molecules, those molecules are not at all toxic, and when we have tested its efficacy in the animals, they are proven to be very much efficacious as well. Now you are in a position to promote your study to the clinical trials. So to get the approval by FDA to promote your study from preclinical trials to clinical trials, you have to file an application which is called as AIND, that is Investigational New Drug Application. So FDA will verify all the data of your preclinical trials and they will give you the permission if they find that your drug is having higher therapeutic potential as compared to the toxic potential. Okay, so after successful acceptance and approval by FDA, the clinical trials will be performed. So in the clinical trials, actual human volunteers and then actual patients for the disease which you have targeted for the treatment will be actually tested for the effective potential of the new drug molecule. After you successfully complete the clinical trials, then again you have to seek for the permission from the FDA for marketing of that particular drug. To seek that approval, you have to file an application which is called as NDA, that is New Drug Application. Again, you have to file this application and submit all the data which you have collected into the preclinical trials. And after the thorough evaluation of every single data, then FDA will accept and give the approval of that for that drug for the human use. Once you cover up all these steps, you have filed NDA also and it has been accepted. After that only you will get an approval to market that particular drug. And evaluation of a drug for its what we say effective and toxic potential is a completely unpredictable process. You cannot simply predict that once you have successfully completed the preclinical trials, means definitely your drug is going to be proven effective in clinical trials as well, and you're definitely going to get the permission. No, there are many drugs which can get eliminated even at the third stage of clinical trial also. Okay, so unless and until you complete all the trials for that particular drug molecule, you cannot predict whether that molecule will definitely come into market or not. Okay, now coming to the main topic, that is preclinical evaluation and evaluation of drug efficacy. So as I told you earlier, to evaluate the activity at preclinical levels, we have three different types of studies. The very first one is in vivo studies, the second one is ex vivo studies, and the third one is in vitro studies. Right? Now, why there is a need of these three different types of studies? So basically, in vivo studies are the most important studies. That's what I can say, which will give you 100% accurate results in the preclinical trials. But there will be certain conditions where in vivo studies are either not affordable or sometimes they are not practically possible, or sometimes to understand the mechanism of action of that particular drug, it is not possible by in vivo studies. Let us take a simple example of an inflammation. Whenever you get any of the insect bite, you will get an inflammation. Now, if you are from the scientific background, then you will understand that for the inflammation, there are different types of mechanism available. One mechanism is because of the histamine response. Second mechanism includes cytokines. Third mechanism includes the TNF factors. Then one another mechanism includes interleukins. And even some other mechanisms do exist, for which we call them as a arachidonic acid metabolites. Okay. So for inflammation itself, there are 4 to 5 different mechanisms. When you have given a drug into an intact animal, you might not be able to understand that your drug has targeted exactly which particular mechanism. Okay, so before you launch the drug into the market, you have to be very sure with the documented evidence that your drug will be acting upon which particular mechanism of that particular disease. Okay, so to verify or to evaluate the mechanism of these type of drugs, the another type of studies like ex vivo studies and in vitro studies can be performed. Okay, so now we will discuss one by one about these 3 types of studies. Coming to the very first type of study, in vivo studies and laboratory animals. So I told you that in vivo studies are most acceptable studies because there we actually use the intact animals and we try to test the harmful as well as effective effects of our drugs. Okay, so we have already discussed about it that any of the drug molecule can definitely have the toxic potential as well. So it is very essential that we have to check for the toxic potential. Now, many people will ask why only animals? Now, let me tell you, some of the drugs at initial stages, when a completely new chemical structure is being invented, you are not at all aware about what level of toxicity it can cause. So the people who are involved in the preclinical trials, they know that certain drugs are there. After giving that particular drug to animal, within 1 hour also animals can die. Some drugs are having that much toxic potentials. So if you imagine without proceeding for the preclinical trials, if we directly go to human trials, then how much loss we can have to bear, right? So for this thing, at preliminary stages, we have to evaluate our drug for its toxic as well as effective potential on certain laboratory animals. Now, again, whether we can use all different types of animals? No. As I discussed in the beginning, there will be certain species of the animals which are being already studied by many of the scientists and they are being proved to have the similarities with the human body. Okay, so we'll be using preferably those animal species only. Now, let us see what all different types of animals we can use for these type of studies. Basically, the animals which are used for these type of studies, they are divided into 2 categories: rodents and non-rodents. So in the category of rodents, the very first animal model which is commonly used is a mice, and the second one is a rat. Okay, so mice are the small animals which usually are having the weight range of 15 to 20 grams, whereas rats will be the large version or larger in the size, and they will be having approximate weight around 150 to 200 grams. Now, why rats? They are not at all similar to humans, but the internal organ structure, variety of mechanisms which do takes place at the internal organ level, like neurotransmission and other things, and genetic makeup of the animals is almost 95% similar with that of the humans. So there are variety of diseases and disorders which we can induce in these type of animals and then test our drugs on these type of animals. Now the question should be there in the minds that how the animals will fall sick. Now, for example, if I want to test my drug for the treatment of cancer, or if I want to test my drug for the treatment of inflammation. Animals will definitely be not falling sick on their own. So we have to first induce the disease into them. Now, how do we induce the disease? As we know, many of the drugs are there which are having certain severe side effects if they are taken at higher doses or if they are uncontrollably taken, right? Like for example, let me tell you, the commonly used painkiller drugs are there. Okay, so you should have this knowledge that ibuprofen and other drugs like aspirin, which we commonly take for headache or painkiller purpose, if they are taken for longer duration, then because they are acidic in nature, they can induce the peptic ulcers. Okay, so ulcers will be there in your stomach if you take it for longer duration. Now, when we have to test a certain drugs for the treatment of any particular disease in the animals, we use these side effects to induce that particular disease condition into the rats. Now, for example, as I told you, if you take anti-inflammatory drugs for longer duration, they will cause a peptic ulcer. Now, I have developed a drug which I expect to have a potential to cure the peptic ulcer. So what I will do, I will give the higher dose for longer duration into these type of animals so that after certain period, peptic ulcers will be induced in the animals. And then now I will test my drug into these animals whether the peptic ulcer which has been induced in those animals that will be cured by my drug or not. Okay. Similarly, there will be variety of drugs which will be used to induce different types of diseases into the animal. So it is very essential thing that whenever you want to start a preclinical study, first thing you have to do is you have to induce the disease in these type of animals. Okay. After you successfully induce the disease, you have to evaluate whether that particular disease is induced in these animals or not. Let me tell you an interesting fact that the rodent models, these are one of the models which have very high metabolic rate. Okay, so it has been said that if you give stones to eat to the rats, then by maybe after 1 or 2 days, they will be able to digest the stones as well. Their body is made up in such a beautiful way that they can digest anything which has been administered to them. So whenever you have to induce the disease, you have to decide the dose of that particular inducing agent. If that dose is not sufficient, then animal body will recover itself at a very faster rate. So your disease is not at all induced, and you will not be able to understand whether the cure of that disease has occurred by animal itself or it has occurred because of your drug. Okay, so you have to take this thing into considerations that when you induce the disease, you have to evaluate whether the disease been induced in the animals or not. Once you confirm that your disease has been induced into the animals, then next step you have to do is you have to start with your treatment, and finally you have to observe whether your treatment is effective or not, right? So variety of diseases like inflammation, then CNS related disorders, wound healing, variety of toxicity studies, then like what we can say, cancer, anti-cancer activities. These type of activities can be studied using these type of models like mice and rats. Okay. Next, coming to the next model, that is a hamster. So hamster is a little higher hierarchical animal in the kingdom, we can say. So hamsters and guinea pigs, these two animal species are also used for evaluation of certain drugs. If we try to observe the difference between rats and these hamsters and guinea pigs, the basic difference we can observe in terms of the sensitivity. Hamsters and guinea pigs, these animals are having little bit higher sensitivity to certain chemicals as compared to rats and mice. Because as I told you, the metabolic rate in rats and mice is very high as compared to humans. So many a time they are able to cure by themselves. But in case of hamsters and guinea pigs, the sensitivity is a little bit higher as compared to mice and rats. So if any drug we expect to have an allergic response. What is an allergy? We usually observe that if you take certain drug or if you administer certain drug, then you will have itching on your skin, you will have rashes, you will have redness, you will have a sensation of heat, and in severe cases, there will be complete swelling of the body as well. Okay, which we commonly call it as allergy, or in the scientific terminology, it is called as the hypersensitivity. Whenever you want to check any treatment for the hypersensitivity, then you can prefer the animals like hamsters and guinea pigs. Guinea pigs specifically are highly sensitive to histamine and histamine related products. So I discussed already that whenever inflammation or this type of allergy is there, histamine is one of the main content which is responsible for this allergic response. Like for example, some people they have allergy to dust also. So if they are exposed to dust, then they will have continuously sneezing and they will cause allergic rhinitis. Okay, so here the histamine secretions in your body are increased at very high levels than the normal. So if you want to test certain drugs which can reduce the levels of histamine, then guinea pigs, hamsters like animals could be one of the good animal models. Also, their skin is little bit more sensitive as compared to rats and mice. So if you want to apply any of the topical formulation is the formulation specifically ointment creams which we apply on the skin. Let me give you an example. If you have observed the formulations like Move, Volini gel, okay, commonly used formulations for the reduction of inflammation, local inflammation. We will always observe and caution given on it that they should not be applied on the open wounds. Now, from where did they got this information that these type of formulations should not be applied on the open wound? Something wrong can happen. So, at the initial stages, when preclinical studies were performed, those type of formulations they were studied on these animal models. That if this drug will be exposed to the open wound, then it can worsen the wound. It can retard the wound healing, or there will be severe burning sensation. There will be pus formation, whatever can be the possible things. Okay, so from these type of studies, the people got idea that our formulation should not be applied on the open wound. Okay, if you want to check the sensitivity of the skin to any of the formulation which is directly to be applied on the skin, then those type of drugs or those type of formulations can also be studied using hamsters and guinea pigs. Okay, so you have to shave the fur, that is shave the hairs on the skin of that particular animal, and on the exposed skin you have to apply your drug and then check whether any allergic response is observed or not, right? Next, coming to the higher most animal of the rodent category, that is a rabbit. Now, let me tell you, very few type of studies will be performed on the rabbits because there are two factors. First of all, it is not easy to maintain the rabbits. The maintenance cost as well as the cost to buy these type of animals is little bit higher. Mice and rats, they might be available under 500 rupees for each animal, but in case of rabbits, uh, at least 2,500 rupees are required for one single animal. And whenever you want to text you have to test activity of any of the drug using these type of animal models, approximately minimum 30 to 36 animals are required, so the cost goes at higher end. Okay, but for certain type of studies, again there are no alternatives available, so you have to study that particular disease condition in those animals only. Okay, so now coming to the animal model of rabbit. If you remember, I have told you that whenever any drug is administered into the body, if we want to check the levels or check the concentration of the drug which are there in the blood, then we have to collect the blood and we have to evaluate how much drug has reached to the blood. Okay, this amount which will be reaching to the blood is studied or is dependent upon one of the type of study which is called as pharmacokinetic studies. So what are basically pharmacokinetic studies? Anything which enters your body will give some or the other treatment to that particular thing, and after certain period of time, that particular thing will be excreted out of your body from any of the ways. Whatever happens with anything that enters your body till it exits your body is studied under the pharmacokinetics. So in scientific terminology, it has been divided into four different studies: absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Whenever you administer any of the drug, most preferred route of administration is oral administration. We prefer to take tablets, syrup, capsules. We will not be easily acceptable to have the injectables every single time, right? So whenever you ingest any of the drug through your mouth, how much the drug will be absorbed, that will be deciding how much drug will be reaching to your blood. Okay, so for understanding the absorption pattern of any of the drug, you have to multiply collect the blood after injecting that particular drug, and after specific time points you have to check how much drug has reached to the circulation or how much drug has reached to the blood. Okay, now in these type of studies you require multiple blood collections. Okay, if you try to try to observe the mice and rats, then hardly 5 to 10% of their body weight will be the amount of blood that will be present in their body. So from the rat, at a time you can maximum collect 0.5 ml of blood, and totally maximum 5 to 6 ml of the blood will be present in the whole rat. So this is not possible to collect repeatedly the blood from the same rat. But when it comes to the rabbits are weighing approximately to 1.5 to 3 kgs. So they have roughly around 50 ml blood in their body. So it is very easier to collect the blood at multiple time points using these rabbits. So when you want to observe the blood concentration at different time points, you will be preferring the rabbits as an animal model. Okay. Also, as we discussed about the skin sensitivity testing, along with the hamsters and guinea pigs, rabbits are also good model because rabbits also do have good sensitivity for the skin. The third important thing is uh, fever testing. Now, let me tell you, if you try to observe that why a simple fever occurs, I'm not talking about any of the infectious fever. If you simply observe that your body temperature is going higher, you are having fever, and try to understand the root cause behind it, then there is something which is called as a pyrogens. Okay, pyrogens are nothing but the waste product of the microorganisms. As a human body, we also create a waste product which are called as stool and urine. Similarly, at the cellular level organisms, the microorganisms, they also produce their own waste products which are called as pyrogens. If these pyrogens will enter your blood circulation, then they have the potential to raise your body temperature. So if we talk about the simple fever, then simple fever is caused because of these pyrogens. Now, where these pyrogens will play an important role, if you have a certain drugs which you are not supposed to take by oral route, because if you take by oral route, then we all know that in our stomach acid is present. So in presence of this acid, this pyrogens and everything will get destructed. So the chances of pyrogens getting infected through your stomach will be very less. But if any drug is directly to be given in your blood circulation, like whatever we call them as injections, saline solutions, okay, if any of the pyrogens will be present in these type of formulations, then it will be very much harmful to humans. Okay, so we usually call them as a sterile product. So sterile is free from any of the particulate material, free from any of the infection, free from pyrogens. Now, how you will come to know whether any of the injection or injectable is free from pyrogens or not? There are very limited chemical test available for testing of these pyrogens. So what we can do is, whenever we have formulated the sterile product, we can ingest it into a rabbit, because rabbits are highly sensitive to pyrogens. Even a small concentration of pyrogens can immediately show the body temperature raise in the rabbits. Okay, so for any of the formulation, if you want to check the presence of pyrogens, then that formulation is injected into the rabbits and body temperature is observed. If you observed a severe rise in body temperature, that means your formulation is not free from pyrogen. You have to again process for it. Okay. So likewise, different types of studies will be performed using rodent animal models. Now, next coming to the non-rodent animal models. Now you will ask a question that already there are so many type of diseases we have already studied that we can study using the rodent animals, but obviously because they are not exactly same as humans, so there will be certain limitations for performing studies on these animals. So whenever such conditions will be there, we will be preferring the non-rodent animals. Now, what are the different types of non-rodent animals? The very first animal models include the cats and the dogs. Okay, we know them very well as pets, and various breeds of them are also available. But for studies, for scientific studies, very specific species, cats and dogs, can only be used. Now you will ask which type of studies can be performed using cats and dogs. We know the disorder called as hypertension or high BP in simple terms. Okay, when it comes for a testing of the blood pressure, you can imagine that all the rodent animals we have discussed, they are continuously moving animals. They will continuously keep on running here and there. Hardly they will sit at one place, and hardly they will have a stable condition. Okay, so because continuous movement is there, what happens is their blood pressure is always fluctuating, right? And also we know they are very small in size, so it becomes very tedious and very crucial process to investigate the blood pressure of these type of animals. Okay, so to evaluate the drugs for testing of their potential to restore the blood pressure to normal, we can go for the cats and dogs. So, firstly, we will be anesthetizing the animal, then we will be ligating one of their arteries for evaluation of blood pressure, and from certain vein, we will be ingesting the drug. So, after administration of drug, what is the effect on blood pressure that will be observed. Again, when it comes to dogs, there is a specific species which is called as a beagle dog. These type of dogs can be used for studying the effect of anti-diabetic drugs. We know about the diabetes that one of the type of diabetes is there where insulin secretion is completely reduced in the body, or insulin secretion is completely damaged or obstructed in the body. There is an organ which is called as a pancreas, and this pancreas has beta cells. Okay, so these beta cells have the function to synthesize the insulin. If by any means these beta cells will get degraded, or these beta cells will be destroyed, then the level of insulin in the blood will go on decreasing. Ultimately, the blood sugar levels will go on the higher side. Okay, there are variety of models available in the rat and mice as well, but as I told you, their metabolic rates are very higher. There are always a chances that animals can self recover from the disease. So you can get some of the false positive results as well. So if you want to confirm the these type of studies, then beagle dogs can be used. So in beagle dogs, what we can do is we will anesthetize the animal surgically. We will remove completely the pancreas from these animals, and then again we will give the treatment of our drug to check whether the blood sugar levels are under control or not. Okay, the next animal species is the monkeys. So we are very well aware about this fact that monkeys are considered as ancestors of the humans. So variety of things which are a little bit different in the other animals can be found similar to the monkeys. So 99% pathophysiological similarities can be observed into the monkeys. There are certain diseases which are called as atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis. In these type of studies, what happens is there will be plaque deposition or cholesterol deposition inside the blood vessels, because of which there will be a reduced blood flow to any specific organs or to the heart. If you try to imagine the other animals, they are already small in size. So if you want to study the drugs which are going to affect at the blood vessel level, then it becomes very crucial. So for testing of the drugs which are directly used for the treatment of serious related disorders or for the treatment of atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis, monkeys can be one of the good models. Okay. Next animal model is horses. Now you will be surprised to know that how horses can be used to test the drug. But let me tell you, not for the testing of any of the efficacy studies, but for testing of certain vaccines, the horses are used. Okay, so it is limited. We can say the horses use is limited only to the testing of certain vaccines. Coming to the next animal model is horseshoe crab. Now this will be very surprising to every one of you that how a crab can be used. Let me tell you, horseshoe crab is one of the most important animal which is having very similar blood structure as that of the human blood structure. Whatever the coagulation of blood takes place in the body, the coagulation of blood of horseshoe crab is also very much similar. In other animals, the coagulation and other mechanisms are little bit different, but as we know, the main components of the blood are RBCs and WBCs. When it comes to another animal, the size of these RBCs and WBCs, they do differ as compared to human. But in case of horseshoe crab, it is much similar. Okay. So what happens is if any of your drug is having a toxic potential where it can destruct the RBCs or WBCs, ultimate effect what will be there if your RBCs will be destructed, then hemoglobin levels will go on decreasing, the oxygen carrying capacity of your blood will go on decreasing, and there will be ultimately a death of human also. Okay, so you have to test whether your drug is having a potential to break down the RBCs or WBCs or not. The process of RBCs and WBC breakdown is called as hemolysis. Okay, so to test whether your drug is having hemolytic effect or not, what you can do is you can collect the blood of horseshoe crab, add your drug into it, and simply check whether you can observe the blood clotting or not. Okay, so if hemolysis will be there, then you can find that the reddish part is getting separated out and forming a gel like structure. Okay, if you observe this thing, then definitely that drug you are not at all going to go ahead with the studies without a modification, because if you use it as it is, then it is clearly showing that it will cause hemolysis and immediately patient can die, right? Next, coming to two interesting models, that is about the zebrafish and Drosophila. So you can be again surprised to know how a fish can be used or how a bee can be used for testing certain drugs which are intended to be used for the humans. So let me tell you, not from the internal organ similarity, but from the genetic makeup similarity, these animals can be used for testing of certain drugs. Like you will be surprised to know the fact that zebrafish are having almost 90 to 95% genetic similarities when compared to humans. The another interesting fact about zebrafish is that at very initial stages they are completely transparent. So if you want to check the toxic potential of any of the drug at organ level, then you can visually check the effect of that drug into the animal. Let us take an example. You have a drug which causes increase in the heart rate. Okay, so if it comes to any other of the animals, then you cannot see the actual heart whether it is pumping at higher rates or not. You can check the heart rate or you can go for the pulse rate determination, right? But in case of zebrafish, at a very initial stages, the heart is clearly visible. So you can actually count the number of times heart beats in 1 minute. Okay, and if any toxic effect will be observed in the animals, then that also can be observed clearly, right? So coming to the about zebrafish, we will first have a little bit introduction about CPCSEA, and then we will be discussing about the zebrafish as a model. So CPCSEA, if you remember at a very first slide, I have discussed that there are certain rules, regulations, and committees which will be looking after for the animals and experiments which are to be conducted on the animals. So this is one of the committee which is called as Committee for the Purpose of Control and Supervision of Experiments on Animals, which is situated at New Delhi. This is a committee which is responsible for giving the permission for any of the animal studies. Okay, this committee is basically established under by the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying under the Ministry of Fishery, Animal Husbandry and Dairying, constituted for the Prevention of Cruelty on Animals Act. When certain type of studies at initial days were performed, it was observed that animals were not given treatment properly. They were killed non-humanly. They were being treated very cruelly. So to control these type of misuse of the animals, this committee has been established by a central government. It prepares a list of rules to ensure a humanly treatment and avoid the misuse of experimental animals. So if you try to check the website of CPCSA, you will find a variety of information which has been provided by CPCSA. Okay, so first of all, it says there should be an establishment of IAEC for experimentation of animals. Now, what do you understand by IAEC? Its full form is Institutional Animal Ethics Committee. Okay. Now, let us consider that I am running an institute, and from now onwards, I want to conduct certain experiments using the animal models in my institution. So, the very first thing that I have to do is, first of all, I have to file an application to CPCSCA that I want to start conducting animal studies in my premises, in my institution. Okay. For conduction of such type of studies, we should have special provisions. What are the special provisions? First of all, there should be a separate place which is called as animal house. You cannot simply store the animals in your laboratories or in your classrooms. Okay, there should be a separate provision of uh, animal house. That animal house should have adequate light and electricity supply. There should be air condition. in every single rooms of those particular animal house. There are basic requirements like whatever the racks will be available, whatever the cages to keep the animals or to house the animals will be required. So all the requirements you have to first prepare at your end. After that, you will file the application to CPCSA to give you then permission. Okay, after you get an approval, sorry, before you get an approval, the CPC committee members will actually personally visit to your establishment. They will observe whether all the requirements are as per the needs or not. If they are satisfied, then they will give you the permission. Now, once you get a permission, it is not open that you can anytime order the animals and you can randomly start any of the studies. Definitely not. Once you get the permission for establishment, then second step is establishment of an institutional animal ethics committee. So this will be the committee which will be taking care of all the experiments which are supposed to be conducted in your institution. Okay, so the person who will be in charge for animal house, he will be the chairman of this committee, IAEC committee. Again, this IAEC committee is not common for all institutions. For every individual institution, IAEC will be different. Okay, so there will be a chairman who will be the in charge of animal house. Secondly, there will be a scientist from other stream, which means from another subject, maybe from chemistry background, maybe from analytics background, maybe from any other background, who is working in the same institution. He will be one of the members. Third will be a CPCSEA nominee and CPCSEA link nominee. So there will be two members who will be allocated by CPCSEA, because these will be the responsible members who will be given special training about variety of things related to animals, their maintenance, their study, and all other related parameters. So two persons from the CPCSA will be there. Then there will be a one person outside from the institution, which will be from the scientific background. Because it can happen that if internally the people are helping each other to manipulate the things, then somebody from the out of the institution should always be there. So one person from out of the institution will be there. One veterinary doctor is necessary, because veterinary doctors are the right persons who will be knowing about the animals in details. Like for humans, we have allopathic doctors, Ayurvedic doctors. Similarly, for the health care of the animals, a veterinary doctor will also be there, and one socially aware member will be there. So likewise, by combining all these members, there will be a constitution of institutional animal ethics committee. Now CPCSA provides a guideline which says that every 6 months you have to conduct the IAEC meeting. What is the purpose behind conducting this IAEC meeting is, whatever study you are expecting to conduct using the animals, you have to write down a detailed proposal of these type of studies first of all. After that, that proposal should be prepared in a specific format which is called as a form B. On the CPCA website you can get the template for form B. So in that template you have to present your proposal. All the members of IEC, they will thoroughly check whatever the proposal is been given to them, how many number of animals, which type of animal you are using, which gender of animals you are using, then what type of study you will be performing, for what duration you will be performing, what is the disease inducing agent, what is a treatment agent, whatever other parameters that you are going to check, whether you will be performing any surgery, whether you will be giving any radiological treatment, whether you will be anesthetizing animals. If using the anesthesia, then which type of anesthesia you using. Every small things have been focused and they are being observed. Once all the members are satisfied, then they will approve that particular protocol. And after the complete approval of this protocol, then only you get a permission to conduct that type of study in your animal house facility. Now you will think that after the approval, the role of IEC is over, but it is not the fact. Until all the animals are utilized and at the end of studies they are sacrificed, IEC members can anytime give surprise visit to the animal house. They can check whether the study has been conducted as per the rules and regulations or not. If there are any violations from the protocol, if you are doing some changes in the protocol which was observed, if such things are observed, then this thing will be reported to CPCSE and a strict action will be taken against that particular institution. And if repeatedly the things are observed, then the institutions can be what we say nullified, or they can their permission can be rejected for lifelong. Okay, so for the people who think that we are doing injustice to the animals by using them for experimentation, I would like to tell them that you please go through the guidelines of CPCSEA. You will come to know that we are not violating any of the rules. We are giving completely human treatment and we are using them for a very good purpose. Now, as we have discussed about the zebrafish as one of the good models, so let us discuss a little bit about the zebrafish. Why I'm explaining this? Because I have performed my master's project using this zebrafish model, and it is one of the very good models to initiate your preclinical studies. So if you remember, I have told you that when it comes to zebrafish at a very initial stages, right from the embryonic stage up to its age of let us say 5 to 6 days, they are completely transparent, and we can actually observe the internal organs. Okay, so here are some pictures of the zebrafish embryo as well as larvae. So in very first picture, you can see a healthy 24 hours post fertilization embryo. So you can see in the embryo, a larva is there, which is having a food sac. You can clearly see its eyes as well. After completion of 72 hours, the embryo will be hatched and larva will come out. So that larva is completely transparent and you can observe the blood flow, heart rate, and peristaltic movement of these particular animals. Now, as I told you, being a transparent, these animals are very good animals for testing of the toxicity, right? So when you want to check the toxicity of any of the drug at very initial stages, means if any drug is there and you want to check whether that particular drug is having toxicity during the pregnancy or not, because for the pregnancy you will be aware about the fact that a variety of drugs are being used. One of the common problems females suffer during the pregnancy is a motion sickness, right? The importance of preclinical trials is evolved from one of the incidences which was related to the drug which was supposed to be used for the motion sickness. Okay, so I'll tell you an incident. It is called as a thalidomide tragedy. So any person who is related to the medicines, he is very well aware about this thalidomide tragedy. What happened? Thalidomide was one of the drugs which was invented for its use to control the morning sickness. The drug has a beautiful effect, and because of which it was very commonly been used in certain countries. Later on, everyone was very shocked to know that all the women or all the pregnant female who received this particular drug during their pregnancy, unfortunately, they gave the birth to the child with a physical deformity. Their limbs, means their hands and their legs, they were either underdeveloped, or if they are developed, then they were sealed along with the whole body. Okay, So it was initially not understandable that why this thing happened, but as the incidences of these type of births were increased, it is called as fecomilia. Okay, so as the cases of fecomilia were increasing continuously day by day, so a survey was conducted and reverse studies were performed. At that time, it was observed that these type of deformities are being produced because of a toxic effect of a drug which is called as a thalidomide. So this tragedy have introduced an importance of preclinical trials. Okay, after this particular incidences, it was made mandatory by regulatory authorities of different countries to incorporate preclinical trials before conduction of the clinical trials. Okay, so now imagine any of the situation where again a drug is possibly having a toxic effect on the embryo or on the fetus. So here you can observe the effect easily. If you see the third diagram, that is a coagulated embryo, third photograph, right? So this particular photograph can easily show you that if the drug is having a toxic potential, then your embryo is completely going to get damaged. So if you observe this type of embryo after giving the treatment, you will immediately come to know that your drug is having toxic potential. Again, if it is having certain developmental deformities, okay, in first thing we saw the complete death of embryo. In second one, we can observe the uh, what we say functional deformity. So here you can see after hatching out from the embryo, the tail is supposed to be detached and the larva should be very straight. The picture of healthy 72-hour post-fertilized larva can be observed for that. But if functional deformity is formed because of the drug, then there will be non-detachment of the tail which will be observed. So these parameters can give you an easy idea whether your drug is having any toxic effect or not. Now we know that in humans or in other animals also, observation of embryonic phases is not that easy, but it can be very easy in the model of zebrafish embryo and larva. Okay, now I'll show you a video where you can clearly observe the blood flow of the larva. So if you observe firstly from this point, then you will observe certain movement. So this is nothing but what we say peristaltic movement. So if you want to study any of the drug which has effect on the peristalsis, then they can be easily observed. You can simply observe after giving the treatment whether the peristaltic movement is increasing or decreasing, right? Similarly, you can here clearly observe the blood flow. Similarly, you can clearly observe the pumping heart as well. Okay, so if you want to collect the blood, you can observe here just by giving a small cut, you can easily collect the blood also. So you must be aware that for the confirmation of the disease as well as for the confirmation of the treatment, we perform various biochemical parameters by collecting the blood of that particular animal. So similarly, even though these zebrafish larvae, they are microstructures, they are hardly 1 to 2 millimeters in the size. So all these photographs and this video is being recorded under the microscope. So even though they are microscopic structures, we can easily conduct variety of studies using them. Okay. Coming to the next type of studies, which is called as ex vivo studies. So now we have observed or we have studied about the in vivo studies, that is using an intact animal. Okay, there are certain type of studies which you cannot conduct in intact animal because you are not able to understand the responses. If you remember a very first example I gave you about the contraction of the smooth muscles, contraction and relaxation of smooth muscles, it is one of the things. Secondly, the helminthiasis or a parasitic infections, right? Whenever there will be any type of parasitic infections, we will be taking a drug. Those drugs will be killing out the parasites, and your disease or disorder caused because of those parasites, they will be getting cured. It is as simple as that. So every single time, it is not necessary that you ingest the parasite first into animal and then give you treatment and then observe whether drug is having treatment or not. So what we can do, we can externally using a beaker or any of the petri plate, let us say, we will collect the parasites into that. We will directly insert our drug into the plate containing parasites, and we will simply observe whether all parasites are dying or not, and how much time it takes for death of those parasites. Okay, so evaluation of anthelmintic drugs, the drugs which are used for the treatment of helminthiasis, right? These type of drugs, they can be tested out of the body. There is no requirement that whole animal should be there and drugs should be given to animal only to observe the response. When it comes to an anti-inflammatory activity, you cannot take something out of the body and you can check the activity. It is not practically possible. But in case of helminthiasis and other parasites infection, we can actually test the drug outside the body. Okay, so when any of the drug is tested for its efficacy outside the body, it is called as ex vivo study. Okay, so anthelmintic drugs can be tested using ex vivo study. And another example I was giving you, that about the smooth muscle contraction. Now, when you are suffering from excessive contraction, you being a human, you can tell that I'm suffering from a cramp, and after giving a treatment, you can answer that now my cramp is relieved. But it is not the same case with the animals. They cannot speak out, they cannot tell whether they are having muscle cramp, whether they are having now muscle relaxation after the treatment or not. So in that case, what we can do is we will be isolating one of the muscle or one of the organ made up of smooth muscles outside the animal body. So first of all, we have to sacrifice the animal. Then surgically, we have to take out that particular organ outside the body, and then we have to maintain that organ in an environment which is almost similar to human environment, human body or animal body environment. Now, to keep any of the organ survive or to keep any of the organ alive, what all things are being provided in the human body? The very first thing is a blood supply, which basically provides nutrition and oxygen. Second important thing is a body temperature, and third important thing is isotonic environment, which means the tonicity of the solution should be maintained. So if we try to maintain these three parameters outside the body, then any of the organ can be made survive outside the body as well. Okay, so here in the second image, isolated organ studies, you will see a diagram where a orange colored tube is there and a red dot is there. This red dot represents any of the tissue. So now we will try to observe how actually this particular thing looks. So here you can see an actual practical video. Here what has been performed is the lower part of the intestine, which is called as uh, duodenum. It has been dissected out of the body and it is maintained in the tube. Okay, so this particular tube, not only duodenum, but it can be studied using jejunum, it can be used using ileum as well. Okay, so ileum is one of the most commonly used organ for these type of studies. So let us say we have dissected out an ileum and we have maintained it in the orange pink color tube. Now this tube contains a solution which provides all the necessary salts and ions which are being provided by animal body or human body. Then aeration you can observe, which ensures the oxygen supply. And outside jacket you will find a water is filled up. This particular water is maintained at a body temperature. So by maintaining all these things, you will be able to make that particular organ survive outside the body as well. When you have a drug which you claim to have a smooth muscle contraction effect, you will simply add that drug into the tube containing this organ and you will observe whether this organ is actually contracting or not. If it is contracting well, then your drug is having muscle contraction effect. And if the muscle is not contracting, then your drug possibly do not have the muscle contraction effect. Okay, so these type of studies, they are called as ex vivo studies. Now coming to the last part of preclinical trials, it is called as in vitro studies. Okay, so what are basically in vitro studies? We have studied about in vivo studies, when the study will be performed on intact animals. We have studied about ex vivo studies, where an isolated organ will be used for the studies. And now comes the in vitro studies, where actually individual cells of any particular organ, they will be used to perform the study. Again, let us take an example of a diabetes, which we discussed earlier. We know that beta cells, which are present in the pancreas, are responsible to secrete the insulin. Okay, so ultimately here we have the mechanism of action very much clear in our mind. There is no confusion, there is no bias. The drug should directly go and penetrate into beta cells, and it should increase the insulin secretion so that elevated blood sugar levels will be restored back to the normal, right? Now, in this case, what we can do, we can directly have beta cells outside the body, which are being maintained as per the standard guidelines. You can directly add your drug on the beta cells, and later on you can check whether there is increase in the insulin secretion or not. Okay. Similarly, there are certain type of studies where the direct cell lines can be used. These type of cell lines, they can be collected either from the animals or directly from the humans as well. Depends upon whatever are the requirement of the studies. Okay, so here are some examples like CHO, which is collected from the Chinese hamster, and these are the ovarian cell lines. So if you want to test any of the drug for the treatment of cancers of the ovary, then you can simply use these cell lines. You can add up your drug and you can check whether the cells are dying or not. Similarly, you can have BHK21 and MDCK cell lines, which are basically collected from the kidney. So you can add up your drug into those cell lines and check whether their functioning is improvising or not. If the functions of those cells are improvising, then what you can claim is your drug is having effect on improving the kidney function, right? So likewise, directly the cell lines can be used for studying the efficacy of any of the drug. Now, here comes a point of bias that many of the people or many of the scientists also, they do not agree with dependency only on the in vitro studies. Because if you remember, I have told you that absorption, when any of the drug is taken orally, absorption is one of the most important factor which is responsible to check how much drug will be absorbed into the blood. If you give the drug orally and very less quantity or no drug is at all getting absorbed into your blood, then it is not going to reach to the organ, it is not going to reach to the cells, and ultimately there will be no effect which can be observed because of the treatment of that particular drug, right? So you cannot directly claim that this drug is having effect on these cell lines, so this is effective. How can you claim that definitely that drug is going to reach those cells? Okay, so that becomes a point of question. But let me tell you, when it comes to a regulatory affairs, the authorities have made an provision where if in vitro studies are to be submitted, then we have to perform in vitro, in vivo correlation studies. They are abbreviated as IVIVC. So what is IVIVC basically? Firstly, you will check the potential of a drug using in vitro studies. You will directly take the respective cell lines, you will add up your drug, you will check whether effect is there or not. You will observe that yes, effect is there. Now what you will do, you will again try to repeat the study using intact animals in vivo studies. Okay, so again, if in vivo studies also you can get good results, that means your drug is getting well absorbed and it is reaching the site of action, and there the mechanism you already know that exactly on which cells it is going to act and what effect it is going to show. So once you correlate these two studies, that means your drug is definitely going to get absorbed and its mechanism also will be clear to you. Okay, so for the people who do not believe only in the in vitro studies, they can definitely go for in vitro, in vivo correlation studies, right? Likewise, a complete study on any of the drug can be performed. So this was all about the preclinical trials. Now many people will be confused about there will be certain diseases or there will be certain disorders which we call them as a genetic disorders. So how you are going to induce those type of diseases in the animals. So let me tell you, transgenic animals is one of the branch which deals with the animals which are having genetic modified species. Okay, like whatever the defected gene will be there, that will be injected into the embryo at very early stages, and then that embryo will be allowed to grow normally. Once that particular animal will give birth to the pups, then those newly born animals, they will be genetically modified animals. So whatever a genetic defect you have injected, that will be there in their genes, and now you can test the drugs using these genetically modified animals as well. Okay, so this is all about the preclinical trials. Coming to the timeline which is required for conduction of these type of preclinical guidelines. So if any company wants to test the drugs at large scale for the preclinical trials, then it takes around 1 to 6 years minimum for the complete study. So it is not something very sweet and short studies like you started your study today and after 1 month you are done with the study. Immediately next month you will file the IND, and third month you will get permission for conduction of clinical trials. No, it is not that easy because depending upon the type of treatment, first of all you have to go for the toxicity testing, right? If your drug treatment is supposed to be for very short duration, like 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, then you can simply perform acute toxicity studies and you can go for your evaluation studies. If your studies are supposed to be for a medium duration, maybe 1 month or 2 months, then you have to first perform acute toxicity studies, followed by subacute toxicity studies, and then go for the evaluation studies. If your treatment is supposed to be lifelong treatment, like for the treatment of diabetes, cancer, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year treatment is required. So in such conditions, first acute toxicity, followed by subacute toxicity, followed by chronic toxicity study, and after evaluation of all these type of toxicity studies, then you will be going for evaluation of actual your activity. Okay, so minimum 1 to 6 years time span is required. After the successful completion of this, if you file an IND and you get an application, you get an approval for conduction of preclinical trials, then further up to 10 to 14 years. So total duration of 6 to 10 years will be required for successful conduction of the clinical trials. And after successful completion of the clinical trials using human volunteers, then only the FDA will be giving you approval for marketing of that particular drug. Okay, so bringing any of the new drug into the market is not a joke. It is one of the very long and very tedious process because ultimately the drugs are going to deal with somebody's life. So they have to be tested at very different levels for every single possible parameter, because of which it takes such a long duration. Okay, so at the end, I would like to tell you that you would be aware about the fact that till date, there is no promising drug available in the market which claims that it can give 100% cure on the COVID-19. That is not practically possible because now you will be able to understand that uh, ideally the study requires 10 to 14 years, but still Many of the scientists have tried their levels at best to bring the most promising results with the new molecules and get it approved by the FDA for an emergency use. Okay, so if some people are there around you who says that science has failed, even though we have so much of high techniques and sophisticated science, we are still not able to develop the drug against the COVID. So I want to tell them that this is not a joke to bring any of the molecule into the market in 2 years, although everyone have tried their levels best. So please do not blame the science. Instead, if uh, you can motivate them, you definitely can do, because what work requires 14 years, they have tried to do it within a span of 1 year with maximum possible efficacy. Okay, so with this, I would like to conclude about this particular topic. And here are certain contact details of mine. So if anybody is interested, they can contact me directly regarding the preclinical trials or the subject of pharmacology. Also, you can visit my page on Instagram and my YouTube channel, where you will be getting an interesting videos. And my basic interest is I try to make the videos on the topics which are not easily understandable by the common people, because many of the scientific terminologies is commonly used. But I try to make them as simple as possible so that even a non-medical students can understand it if they are interested. So if you know anybody, please definitely do share this video with them. Please do ask them to subscribe my channel. And thank you so much for your valuable time to listen to my this lecture. And I hope the concept of preclinical trials is now clear in everybody's mind. But still, if anybody wants to discuss anything, they can directly contact me, or your comments are always welcome. Please do share your views about this video, whether you liked it or not, and please do subscribe the channel. Thank you so much.